What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Movie Emporium's Amazon Original Prime review of Being the Ricardos. This film is directed by and written by Aaron Sorkin. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like any of the videos, awesome, hit that like button, as well as commenting below on any video to watch, including this one. So Being the Ricardos is, in essence, a behind-the-scenes story about 1 week on the set of I Love Lucy. It, of course, stars Nicole Kidman as Lucille Balls, Javier Bardem as, of course, Desi Arnaz, and then we have some other famous actors. And it, in essence, shows how difficult it was not only to work on this show, but how difficult the life of Lucille Balls was for creating this show, for how she was difficult to work with, how she was being accused of being part of the Communist Party, and how she had to kind of navigate her husband, who she believes was having marital affairs and stuff like that. And so what this movie does in very Aaron Sorkin fashion is shows us the nuts and bolts of not how only this production works on I Love Lucy, but how it started to slowly collapse, how everybody started to kind of fight with one another. So the turmoil, I guess you could say, that was what this movie's about in its essence. So I think at this point, it's safe to say that Aaron Sorkin is considered one of the best in the biz when it comes to writing, especially behind the scenes type stories. I mean, you look at stuff like Studio 60, you look at stuff like The Social Network and West Wing and Sports Night. The guy has a knack for just kind of breaking down the Hollywood system, breaking down the nuts and bolts of how a studio system works, or how a show works, or how a famous company works and stuff like that. And he can get into like the skin of these characters, the heart and soul of these characters, and just kind of tell a riveting story. I mean, last year's Trial of the Chicago 7 is a perfect example of a great told story, which is fascinating characters. Even though it's based on a true story, it's still fascinating to watch because he just knows his genre and he knows how to do it very, very well. So him coming along to do Being the Ricardos, doing about Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz in the studio behind, I Love Lucy, it makes a lot of sense because he can break down these characters, and sometimes they'll be unlikable, but sometimes the most of the time they'll be riveting and interesting. And I went into this movie very, very excited. I mean, we have, Nicole Kidman, Javier Bardem, J.K. Simmons, Alia Shawkat, Tony Hale. It's just a movie full of great actors, Gregg and stuff like that. And so hit premiering on Amazon Prime Original makes it also very nice because you can, watch it at home. It's a couple hours long and stuff like that. And so the question remains, and the one you guys are all asking, is how's the direction, how's the writing, how's the storytelling? I'm going to be the first to admit when I can see a project going off the rails and seeing a writer-director I truly love kind of fall to pieces when they're telling a story, and that's exactly what's happening in this film, Being the Ricardos. I feel that this is the worst of Aaron Sorkin and his writing abilities. I think this is a movie that has so much potential and has so much interesting concepts and content behind it that when you get into the nuts and bolts of the storytelling, the problem becomes, especially when a person like Aaron Sorkin is writing, that the characters themselves get lost in the mix. And on top of that, this is a movie that has many different storylines, many different time periods, many different points of contention that it has to deal with, that it becomes lost in the translation, it becomes lost in the mix. There was points in this movie where we'd be jumping timelines and you don't realize you're jumping timelines until it's too late, so you're completely caught off guard. You have no idea what's going on. We'll show the beginnings of Lucille Ball, then we'll show her in the middle section where it says dealing with the communism stuff, then we'll deal with the problems with their relationship between Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, and it just kind of jumps all over the place when it wants to, and it has no real structure to it. When you look at something like, of course, Social Network, or even Trial of Chicago 7 or Molly's Game, there is a very interesting structure of them jumping back and forth in time, but you're never lost with what you're doing. You're never lost with how you're doing it. It's fully able to tell you the story and do what it needs to do and be kind of kinetic. Here it's not doing any of that. You're so confused by the whole storyline about who's doing what and where's going where and blah blah blah, that sometimes they're telling the same moment of the story, but they're telling it in different versions. It's just not well written. It's not well directed, to be fairly honest, and it has a lot of issues, especially when it comes to the character development. Lucille Ball, who's played by Nicole Kidman, is supposed to be the main linchpin of the story, but she gets lost in the shuffle of all these other characters who are actually much more interesting, that she becomes this shrewd, kind of devilish character with a lot of diva-like qualities. Is not very interesting. You know, we see a character that I know in real life had, you know, issues when it came to how she treated people, but there's got to be some likability there, and Nicole Kidman doesn't give us any likability when it comes to the character Lucille Ball. We're seeing so many different things kind of thrown at us at once, whether they're filming on live on the studio audience, or we're seeing her have problems with how a dinner scene is placed and how she's going to deal with a pregnancy. And you know, there's points where we're supposed to feel kind of sympathy for her and we don't. And I don't blame Nicole Kidman. I just blame the storytelling and how they kind of developed this character. And I don't feel it's a very well written, very respected version of Lucille Ball. I really don't. Like I said, Nicole Kidman does the best she can, but she's hammy and over the top and silly. And it just doesn't work as a character. And then, like I said, when you have like Desi Arnaz, the Javier Bardem character, come in, his character's there, but it's a little more of a skeleton of his like actual self. And it's just, you know, like once again, Javier Bardem's doing the best he can, and it's the same thing with J.K. Simmons and Alia Shawkat, who has some good moments, and Gregg and Tony Hale. But once again, they're just not well developed characters. It feels like a 2 hour, 11-minute movie that is almost like a Lifetime movie. And that's not something I ever want to say about a movie that's directed by Aaron Sorkin. It really isn't. It's just really just a very sloppily put it together movie. It feels like it could be 2 stories in one, or maybe like a limited series or something like that, which I thought would have been kind of interesting. But for all it's trying to do for 2 hours and 11 minutes, and everything it's trying to portray, and then the music's very distracting. It's trying to make the movie very fantastical and very earthial and stuff like that, but it just becomes too much and too kind of in your face. And that's a lot of what this movie is also trying to do, is it's trying to be too on the nose and too much in your face, and it just doesn't work, and so on and so forth. But if I could say anything positive, the costume and the set design and the camera work are all fantastic. The use of fog that they use in this movie, the use of like the back in the 50s and 60s era and stuff like that, it works on that level of aesthetics, so I can see Oscar point there. But overall, it's a movie that has a lot of problems. It falters under its own weight. It has a lot of Aaron Sorkinisms, but it just doesn't use them very well. And I think it's a misstep for Aaron Sorkin himself. I think he's much more talented than what he's presenting here. And I think in the end, it's just a movie that wants to be something, tries its hardest to be it, and it just completely fails on that aspect. So overall, I didn't like the movie. You may like it, so let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed it. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next. If you like any of these videos, awesome, hit that like button, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.